All right, and we're live. Jay, how are you doing tonight, man?
Doing good, man. Doing good. How you doing tonight?
Pretty good, pretty good. I'm surprised that you are rocking the Giants banner, even though we lost
I'm still a
yesterday.
fan, bro. I've gone through 9 years of pain. One loss is nothing.
I'm surprised you're keeping your composure about last night's loss because it was pretty bad.
It was pretty bad. That team came to MetLife with a mission to punch us in the mouth, and they succeeded.
Well,
Very
I mean,
good.
it happens. We can't be perfect all the time, right?
Yeah, it was a good wake-up call. We needed that. We're not
Yeah.
that good. It's just
We're
shows. I've been saying this all year long, all season.
But there's a positive in all of this, though, Jay. There's a positive in all of this. And
Yeah,
I know that you've been introducing the guests, and I hope you don't mind if this time around
Oh, yes,
I
please.
introduce that we have the guest tonight.
Yes, by all means,
So-
this is your stage.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm super excited, can I just say, to have this man on the show tonight. When
Oh.
my wife and her friends found out that he was going to be on the show, they were super excited. So let me just say that this man is the reason why my ancestors are proud of me again. Okay?
Let's go.
So I am Colombian born and bred and have never danced salsa as well as I started to once I met this man. So some of you might know him as Steve Santos. Others might know him more popularly as Mr. NJ Salsa himself. Steve, how are you doing tonight, man?
What's up, John? What's up, Jay?
How's
Listen,
everything?
Quite the introduction.
Yeah, we definitely we definitely practice. I mean, you're a big time guest, man. You're a busy guy, so we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us tonight, man. So how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on. I'm doing good. I'm actually at the studio where we do our classes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that, right? Because we were doing a little bit of research before we started talking to you, and we saw that you did an interview for Telemundo. But before we talk about how that happened, though, would you mind just telling the people who you are and how you got started and what you're doing today?
Yeah. So I got started dancing because I was dating someone who was a really good dancer, and when we would go out to clubs to dance, I would get lost when salsa would come on. And so we took some lessons together, but it really wasn't until we broke up that I kind of, inundated myself in dance, and I fell in love with it. It's a great way to meet people. It's a great way to stay active for those of us who are inclined to kind of understand the world through physical motion. Dancing is a really good way of having that kind of experience.
No, absolutely. And I think, what's interesting about that is the fact that it sort of takes, not that it sort of takes, but in certain cases, a heartbreak always motivates a guy, like it's the weirdest thing. Like Jay, so like it's crazy, right? But the only reason why I went back to college was because I broke up with a girl who I dated for like over 4 years. And her mom would give me crap about, oh, you can't be with him. He's not educated. And that was like the one thing that motivated me to go back. So, Jay, have you had something similar?
Hell yeah. I had a relationship end, and I got into the best shape in my life after that. I was a gym rat for like a year and a half.
Yeah, so that's always like the most interesting thing. So, Steve, when that relationship ended, and you started dancing, was there like an aftermath after that? Like, did she see that you were on these dance floors, like perfecting your craft? And if so, like, what was that conversation like, if there was any afterwards?
Yeah. So she's actually my daughter's mom.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic because the relationship never completely broke off, right? Because we're going to be in each other's lives forever,
Right.
So, because of our daughter. So, but yeah, it's been cool to to see how she's adapted to it. She's acknowledged my passion for it, and that I'm good with it. But I think more importantly, she appreciates how I brought my daughter into that as a cultural connection, as a way of understanding herself, as a platform for giving her the ability to express herself. Dancing's beautiful in that way. So, it's had a good influence in our lives.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think the interesting thing that you mentioned a couple minutes ago, too, was that salsa was the one sort of dance that you didn't really really understand that well. So did you dance merengue and bachata and the other ones?
Yeah. It's
And
it's
how,
it's a little bit easier. Those
That it
gotcha.
is. That it is. 100% agree with that statement right there.
Mhm.
So what was the more, I guess, complex thing about dancing salsa for the people that really don't understand what that motion is like? Is it just that it's a little bit more, I guess, how can I explain it? A little bit more difficult from the perspective that there's timing to it, right? Like there's steps involved and things of that nature.
It's definitely more intricate than the other two dances. I don't want to um, downplay how beautiful and how intricate merengue and bachata can be, but salsa is a it's a you know it's a different system. The steps are a little bit more complex. With merengue, you have a 1-2 step, always alternating your feet. That's pretty easy to comprehend. With bachata, you have 1-2-3 tap, 1-2-3 tap. That's pretty easy to comprehend. But with salsa, you're skipping count. You're not stepping on every count. You're moving forward and back. It's a little bit more intricate, and then add to that all of the turns and arm movements and upper body movements. It's just more challenging of a dance.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. Now, Jay, are you a proficient dancer? Do you know how to dance salsa, merengue, bachata?
So I will say I'm very confident in bachata and merengue. And then salsa comes into me, but like later on in the night when the confidence goes up,
After a couple drinks.
after a couple drinks, that's when the hips get loose, I would
Well,
say.
I think that's one of the more challenging things about growing up as a Spanish guy, right? Because the expectation is, whether you're from Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico or Colombia or Cuba, the expectation is that you know how to dance, and that's not always the case.
Nah,
you know
it's not.
and that was one of the more difficult things for me, to be honest with you. And one of the reasons why I sought out Steve was because I would go out with my wife, and it would be the most awkward thing because she would be out dancing and people would come up to me and be like, "You're not going to dance with her?" And it was sort of like, I can't really dance. But I feel like it was even worse because I'm Colombian.
Yeah, that's a little.
So it was sort of like, wait, you're Colombian, you don't know how to dance? And so it's an interesting dynamic, Steve, because you're Portuguese, right? Which I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So I guess typically in your culture, like what's the typical dance that you dance in Portugal? Is it like a specific dance? Is it typically what like the other Spanish people dance? Like what exactly is the typical dance?
I would say traditionally it's folklore.
Mm-hmm.
More recently, it's kizomba, which has come from Angola, which is a Portuguese-speaking country on the west coast of Africa. And so their music and dance has made its way to Portugal and other parts of the world. It's international now. So that music and dance is a little bit more popular now in Portugal. But traditionally, it's folklore. They don't really have what what the Caribbean islands, what emerged in the Caribbean islands, which is that African base mixed in with some Spanish culture and a lot of other beautiful things.
Right. And that was actually something, a mental note that I had, and I was going to touch base on Kizomba a little bit later. But before we get into that, though, so let's take it a step back and let's talk about your first moments learning salsa. So did you seek out an instructor? Like what exactly was the process that got you into, the place where you are today, where you're like an expert now?
Yeah, so for me, I think it started with martial arts. That was my first passion growing up.
Oh,
So
wow.
my I begged my mom to enroll me in martial arts when I was about 12. So I went from Aikido to karate. I earned the black belt in karate. Then I did kickboxing. Then I did jujitsu. And then my body was in pain by the time I was in my mid-20s. I was really in a lot of pain, especially with my shoulder because of an accident that I had when I was 16. So it just kept getting aggravated. Every time I would come out of practice, I was in this, in this state of mind where, I had to reason with myself. How do I continue this when I'm always in pain, and it takes me a couple of days just to recover. So So I stopped doing that. I started personal training, and that's how I got. That's about the time that I also got into dancing. And so for me, it's always been a way of making sense of the world through movement.
Mm-hmm.
First from martial arts, then through personal training, then through dance. And like anything else, you eventually have to teach the thing that you want to become a master of. You guys are doing a good thing here with your podcast, and you're becoming better and better and better each time you do it. At some point, to teach it to someone else is to really put yourself in a position where you're understanding it at a fundamental level. And that's how I looked at dancing. I had to teach it if I wanted to become, really, really proficient in it. And so that, I did that. But my dance instructor one time couldn't make it to a nightclub class. And he asked me if I would come and teach the class for him. So I did that. And that was my first taste of, teaching dance. And that's all she wrote. After that, I ran with it.
It's funny. We have a saying around here that Jay says all the time when someone's dropping like some major keys, as DJ Khaled would say. What did we say? What did we say, Jay?
Man just dropped some bars.
He was dropping some bars. For sure. And so like that's an interesting dynamic, Jay, because I've actually taken salsa classes before when I was young, but I never really pursued it though. But the one thing that I did like about Steve, and I'm curious if your martial arts had some sort of, I guess, effect on your Zen-like patience, because no matter how many times me or my wife messed up, he was there extremely supportive and never got frustrated. So would you say that your martial arts helped you in developing that patience when it comes to instructing people?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, my instructor was good enough to put me to teach. By the time I was 16, I was a brown belt, and that's the belt right before you get to black. And so he would put me to teach the young kids, and that was my introduction into teaching actually. And that's something else that I kind of fell in love with and connected to at a young age, teaching. And I went on to teach not only, martial arts and fitness and dance, but I also taught as an adjunct professor. So for 5 years, I taught in academia. I taught philosophy. Wow. I taught world religions. I taught public administration, and I had an opportunity to work with adults. But in addition to that, like I'm a slow processor. It takes a lot for me to really comprehend something. But when I get it, I get it, and I own it. But it takes me a while to get there. And so I think, in addition to having the experience with teaching little ones and teaching adults and all of that, just being a slow learner, puts me in a position where I want to show the same kind of patience that somebody would have to show to me if I were to learn the thing that they're trying to teach me.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting thing, right? Because I remember, I think the first class that we ever took with you, we're learning the steps and we kept messing up. And I kept saying to myself, at one point, he's going to get upset and he's going to yell and say, like, you guys are messing it up. But you never did, no matter how many times we messed up. So I have to ask you this question. Has there ever been a moment where maybe you've lost your patience a little bit just because the errors were a little bit too much?
Yeah, I've lost my patience.
It's hard not to lose your patience when you work with people. Like at some point, you got to break.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's because of your own disposition, right? Like if I drank the night before, didn't get enough sleep, and now I'm doing an 8 o'clock session in the morning. I'm not in the best position to give my all to the people that I'm working with. So sometimes it's my own issue rather than anybody else's issue. It's just I'm short on patience. I think if and when I've become impatient with someone, it's probably because they've been taking a series of lessons with me and they really haven't practiced outside of the session.
Oh, yeah.
Because you place that expectation on someone. You see their talent, you see their potential as they're in front of you. You see that, right? Like you see what they can get if they just put a little bit more effort outside of the sessions that we're working on. But they don't, for whatever reason. And that's not, of course, we have to make plenty of room for people's lives, right? Like everybody has lives. And, what is dance to someone? For most people, it's just a form of play. It's a form of recreation. But, they got to work and put groceries on the table and deal with family and, life. Those are the more important things. So, but when you see somebody that has all this potential, and I'm going to throw this back to you guys, right? So when you see somebody that has all this potential, but they're not following through on it, how do you respond?
Yeah, I mean, Jay, you want to answer that question first?
I'm still working on that because I have a 3-year-old son, and sometimes like him himself, man, like I know his potential, and that little guy will get an outburst out of me that I'm like, yo, I need to work on this, man. Like this kid, because I just expect so much from him, because I know how smart he is and stuff, and I'm just like, yo, this is not what I want to be. So I'm still working on that a lot in that department.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. So I think for me, like, and Steve, I don't know if you know this, but I work in HR. So one of the things that I've realized, in my career is that you can't talk to everybody the same way, right? Certain people, they prefer a different means of communication, right? Some people prefer a more direct approach that seems to get to them a little bit better, whereas other people, you need to talk to them a little bit more softer and kind of say, hey, this is probably the best way to do things, and kind of coach them and hold their hand along the way. So I'm curious, do you kind of experience the same thing as well, where depending on the person, you have to kind of fix your communication approach?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, one of the things that I appreciate about working in academia was, you get to understand that people have different learning styles, and like I'm a slow processor. I don't make sense of things real quickly. It takes me a while, and and some people are emotionally intelligent, and some people are good with test taking, and some people understand the world through touch and physical movement, and you have to make room for everybody. You have to figure out how to work with all these people.
Oh no, for sure. And I'm curious, right? Because, dancing, I think in certain cases, and correct me if I'm wrong, but practice makes perfect. But has there ever been a situation where you were teaching someone, whether it's bachata, kazumba, or salsa, and they just weren't getting it to the point where you just said, my guy or my girl, like, you just don't have it?
There's one person who I worked with for over a year, who struggles immensely with coordination, and he and I both kind of came to the conclusion, or at least we think it's like a neurological thing.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So typically, if somebody has no issues with their mental capacity or whatever, you can learn to dance, because it's a matter of coordination, moving your body 1 foot at a time, 1 arm at a time. We all do this in everyday life, so it's just kind of learning these new patterns. That could be the challenging part. You walk every day, you transfer your weight every day from 1 foot to the other. So if you could walk, I'm of the position that you can also dance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, dancing is a really complex thing, especially when you factor in everything that's involved with it, right? Because it's not just the steps, but it's also, from what I've learned from you, is the motion and making it seem seamless, which is difficult. I wonder, right, when it comes to your specific empire that you've built, how exactly did you get that started?
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. Appreciate that question. That where NJ Salsa is a network of communities. So we have communities in Elizabeth and Newark. We're getting ready to build one. Just for context for the viewer, we're now in November of 2022. Come January of 2023, we're already looking for a community to plant a community in Rawway. So we have these different communities that we plant and grow and flourish. I think that understanding of community originally came from me being in church. I grew up in a church setting. I was part of a youth group. I studied religion in school, so I have an understanding of congregational studies or congregational settings and dynamics. And I know the benefit that being part of a community can bring to someone. So that's kind of been my mentality with building NJ Salsa, is creating experiences where people can connect at a social level. It's not about dance, really. It's, dancing is just like our method, our way of bringing people together. But it's really about community. It's really about connecting at a social level, meeting people. Everybody needs to meet someone. Everybody needs to connect at a social level. We all need those social bonds to flourish as human beings. So that's what NJ Salsa is. And, I fell in love with dance. I studied community organizing in school. I had that congregational background. It made sense to me when I finished grad school to start building a community.
So how did you get started? Because that's an interesting concept and idea. Did you just kind of visit other dance studios and kind of just start from that perspective?
I was already in the dance, scene before I ever thought about NJ Salsa. So, in my mid-20s, I got into dance, and it's a dope community. Like, you can go out essentially any night of the week and meet people that you know and meet new people and speak the same language through dance. It's a great, social life. It's great for having a creative outlet. So I had already enjoyed the benefits of being part of the dance community. While I went through school, I was taking lessons, getting better at it. I started teaching it. While I was going through grad school, I was teaching at dance studios. So I already had, the practice of teaching dance. But it wasn't until I finished grad school that I planted the community. I planted a small group of people. It started with my barber.
Good.
Oh, there we go. Barbers are like the mayors of the community, I think.
Absolutely.
So I would sit in Miguel's chair, and he is that man bleeds salsa. He's Puerto Rican, loves it, loves the music, loves the culture, loves the dance. And I would sit in his chair and lament to him how I was driving half hour. And I live in I moved to Elizabeth after grad school, so I was driving half hour to go dance with this community. I'm like, we should have this here in Elizabeth. We should have this kind of community here. And, it was him and 5 other people. And we formed the core group. And we just started doing lessons. I met with a local business owner who owned a nightclub. And I made an arrangement with him. And I told him what I wanted to do. And he saw the vision. And he opened up the doors. And that's it. I started doing dance lessons. And little by little, I started piecing together a core group of people who believed in the vision. And we became friends. We would go out to eat with each other, hang out at each other's houses, do things that friends do, go out dancing. And little by little, that became a community. we just kept adding on people. And at some point, I went from having one location to 2 to 3, and it just kept expanding in that way.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you're a busy man, and it's really impressive to hear the growth and how you started to where you are today. So roughly, how many years would you say it took for you to build this empire that you have today?
The NJ Salsa just made 6 years in September.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congrats, man.
Thanks.
That's impressive, and I'm sure that's a lot of hard work and networking with different nightclubs to kind of set your foot in there. So, I guess exactly like your schedule now, right? What are the main your main haunts, your main clubs that you work out of throughout the week?
Tuesdays, we're at Lobby in Elizabeth. That's our day one spot. Wednesdays, we're at Lit 21 in Newark. Fridays, we're at Lit 21 in Newark in a different room. And we're getting ready to add Sundays in January in Rahway.
Oh, wow, my hometown. Well, not my hometown, but where I live at now. That's pretty impressive. Does that, I'm curious, right? Because that's a lot of, especially with the nights and stuff like that. Does it get exhausting?
Yeah. It definitely has its own traps, always being around alcohol. The challenges of the long hours, if I start in the morning with private lessons, and I end at 1:30 in the morning, that's a very long day. So it could be challenging in different ways.
Yeah, I've always wanted to, if you don't mind touching on the psychology of that, right? Because I find that fascinating, especially from a dancing perspective where you're right. Like in a lot of cases, there's a lot of temptation, right? So how did you manage to kind of keep sane throughout that entire process? Because I'm sure it's very easy to get caught up with the bad, the wrong crowd and get caught up in the drugs and the alcohol. So how'd you keep yourself together? Did you just kind of focus on the vision that you had in mind and it just kind of propelled you forward?
Yeah, well, NJ Salsa is not necessarily an exclusive community. So it's open to anybody who wants to come out and take dance lessons and, participate in social dancing. But the core group of people are really a good group of people. So it's good to have those folks around you. And then the other challenge, the other temptations, the other challenges, it's just having that very small group who you can be honest with, who you can be yourself with, who you can share what you're struggling with. That's it, man. It's just those personal relationships that can bring you back when you start to stray away.
Yeah, it's sort of like my relationship with Jay, where sometimes I ask like these wild questions, and Jay's like, "Don't ask that."
Don't do it.
But my argument is for entertainment purposes. But yeah, I think there was one time I had said a comment, and after the episode, he was just like flummoxed and surprised by it. He's like, "Yeah, do me a favor, man. Don't ask that question." But you're right. You need.
Was it to him or was it to a guest?
No, I think it was like to a guest. I think I said something that in hindsight probably wasn't the best question.
I'm having flashbacks of it now.
Yeah, but you need people like that, though, And so, like, the other thing that I wanted to talk about, Steve, if you don't mind me asking this question, just because I find it, interesting, more from like the interpersonal dynamic of it. But is it tough, and I don't know what your relationship status is, to be a dance instructor, knowing that in certain cases, dance could be very passionate and intimate. Like, has there ever been a situation where you had to tell someone like, hey, like, this is just professional only, like, this is kind of going a weird path?
Yeah. Yes, I think in this kind of profession, people come out to dance in large part because they want to meet people, right? And you can never let that slip from your mind that this is the reason that people are coming out, because they want to meet people. So in addition to that, dancing is like you said, it has this beauty of sensuality, and you're smiling a lot, eye contact, physical touch. It could be pretty easy to get the wrong signal. So, like any profession where you're working with people, you have to set those boundaries. You have to be clear about those boundaries.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I always joke around with Jay all the time, and I'm like, it's probably a good thing, Jay. And again, for entertainment purposes only, full disclosure here, that you were never a dance instructor.
Yeah. I like it where I am today.
I think being a barber was a safe bet.
Yeah, way safer. Behind the chair. That's where I belong.
So I guess, Steve, in regards to all the different types of dances that you teach, is there one that you prefer, that you like the most?
I go through seasons, man, to be honest with you.
That's interesting.
So, yeah. I mean, salsa is my love. I think, the diversity in the content of the music is very broad, right? Like you can find a song about love, hate, luck, fate, drugs, falling in love, cheating, violence, like you name it. Name a topic, and there's a song out there about it. I think you don't find that kind of breadth in my opinion, in other genres of music. I think it's very unique in that way. But there's times where, I'm all about bachata. There's times where I'm all about kizomba. Like, I go through these seasons where my focus, turns towards one dance or another.
And I think the interesting thing too, that, when you were giving us a lesson, me and my wife, when we visited you one time, is that I found it interesting that you're still, even though like personally, I think you're like a master at what you do, you still make the time to perfect your craft and actually go to different dances and see what's out there. I remember you telling me you went to a salsa event and you were, fascinated by the way that the people were dancing, because there's different forms and different styles of salsa, right? Like, like you were telling me, I think that one time, that the Colombian style is a little bit more quicker, So do you prefer a specific style of salsa, or you kind of just open to anyone?
I can appreciate the different styles. Yeah, I can appreciate the different styles. I have my own expression of it. I've been doing it long enough where my personality comes out in a way that suits me when I dance. But yeah, just like I told you, I live amongst Colombians here in Elizabeth. This is like the
Columbia Central.
Yeah, New Jersey,
Mecca.
Right?
Yeah.
Mecca. And when you go to the house parties, or the local clubs where people who grew up dancing, right, at home in the streets, like you find them in these nightclubs, I could just watch, and I just watch, and I pick up these little details, like the beauty of having an authentic style that you grew up with. There's something very beautiful about that. So I try to look at every style in that way, but of course you always have your own personality. Like as a barber, right? The way you fade, the way, you do lines, all of these things, kind of your personality comes out.
Absolutely. I say it all the time especially when I like fill in for my other coworkers and I'll take care of their clients. I'll be like, yo, my man, you just got blessed with a Dominican fade. Like, this will change your life right here. And not throwing shade at my coworkers, but the touch is different. The art is different.
Yes.
Well, what's interesting too, and to draw a parallel here, but I think in certain cases, barbers could be arrogant, but they have to be, right? Like you have to be confident in your craft. So Do you think there's a similar thing with with dance instructors where you have to be confident in your craft?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, when I look at the dance scene, like if you were to pull up YouTube and just watch any dance from a festival or a congress or something like that, there's a lot of confidence in there. I mean, I think some of it is masking insecurities. Of course, we all have our own insecurities, and sometimes we mask it by being overconfident or bombastic or just like arrogant. But you have to have some level of confidence in order to do that kind of thing, or maybe even some kind of, megalomania, like this sense of purpose, like divine purpose, almost like,
Guys.
yeah, like.
Yeah, I was about to say my line real quick. That's why I just didn't want to
Say
cut
it, Jay.
you off.
Just say it.
Man,
Just say
dropping
it.
bars out here, bro. It gets me excited.
I think this is what it's interesting, right? But this is sort of why we started the podcast. It's to really talk to people and to the everyday people, because I think people have interesting stories. So when we have an entertaining guest who, as Jay would say, is dropping bars, that inspires us. It motivates us. So that's why we're both over here, nodding our heads, because it's fascinating stuff. And you had mentioned a specific dance that I wanted to touch base on earlier, and it was, to be honest with you, Steve, the first time I ever heard it. So it was actually, and you mentioned it earlier, I remember just finishing one of your salsa lessons, and there was, I guess, a girl that was there for her salsa, for her dance lesson. And she's like, "Oh, are you guys here for Kazumba?" And I'm like, "Kazumba?" I was like, what is that? And in fact, when I was talking to Jay, kind of prepping for this interview, Jay, you didn't know what Kazumba was, right?
Nah, I had to Google it.
Yeah.
And I had never heard of it. And, watching the clip, I was like, wow, that's some passionate music right there. Like dancing. Like, so, very intimate and like, it's like,
yeah, a lot of hip motion. So I guess for the listeners out there, Steve, how would you describe Kazumba in a way that they could visually and I guess audibly understand it?
Audibly, I would say that it probably sounds like reggaeton.
Like, that's the kind of vibe I got, like the Afrobeat music, to it.
Right. So yeah, some Afrobeat flavor in there. It is African, but like beats per minute, like the tempo, it appears to me to be very similar to reggaeton. I think from a dance perspective, it's very intimate. You're literally body to body. You move as one. There are openings and tricks. There's some soccer influence in Kizomba, but it originated in Angola, Africa, west coast of Africa. Made its way to Portugal, to Paris. There's a big hub in Paris right now. That practices what's called urban kiz, which is an emerging style of that was originally grounded in Kizomba, but was picked up by a younger generation, a younger demographic, and they're doing some dope stuff with it. Some pop and lock is in there. Like it's pretty cool. It's a beautiful dance. It's very different. It's kind of like walking with tricks.
That's pretty. That simplifies it a lot right there.
That's a good way to define it. Now, so like, when did that start coming over to the States though? Because I didn't realize how popular it was until, I started seeing people on your Instagram channel, practicing it. So when did it come to the States, or when did you think it started to kind of blow up over here?
I don't think it's blown up here yet.
Mm-hmm.
There are places in the world where you could talk about it having having a full effect on culture. Like in Paris, you can dance kizomba every night of the week.
Wow.
They have parties during the week. 200 people will show up for their social. On the weekend, you get close to 1,000 people showing up for some of these parties. So like it's a hub. It's a place where really urban kiz is very prominent. I had a friend who was a dancer who I saw at a wedding recently. He lives in London.
Wow.
And I asked him, how's the dance scene out there? What's going on? What's most popular? Salsa, bachata? He says, actually, kizomba is more popular than the other two. So I was very surprised to hear that.
Wow.
Montreal, there's a very big population in Montreal that dances kizomba. I'm not sure when it came over to the States. I think like it hasn't had its full effect yet here. I think it could really be picked up by, but I think the younger demographic has to embrace it.
Hmm. When did you learn how to dance kazumba, or when did it come into your life?
When I was living in Princeton, I was teaching at a dance studio in the next city, and I was teaching salsa, and one of the instructors there was teaching kizomba, and he is the one who introduced me to kizomba. He's a Haitian man.
Wow.
And there's a similarity between what Haitians dance, which is compa, and another dance, zouk, and kizomba. There's some common ground between those dances. And he's the one that put me on. So we became friends. A few years later, I started NJ Salsa. I started with salsa and bachata. I wanted to bring kizomba. So he was the man that I called to come and bring it. And he did. And that man drove 1 hour every Wednesday to come and teach a class. And he was instrumental in bringing kizomba not only to NJ Salsa, but through NJ Salsa to North Jersey. And his name is Butterly Lubin. We call him Butter.
Wow.
And he's the one that brought it to us in 2017. Yeah,
Wow.
2017. Yeah.
I'm sure part of the dancing, right, for probably for Butter as well, is sort of like a cultural thing, right, where it's sort of like this passion and like this appreciation, where I'm sure he loves to kind of teach people like this specific dance because it means something to him, right? Do you kind of experience the same way when you're teaching, salsa or another dance where it means something to you, so like you take great pride in it?
Yeah, for sure. I think it could be a platform for you to express yourself.
Mm-hmm.
For you to have like a creative expression, an artistic expression, a playful expression. In addition to that, it's a great way to meet people. One of the best ways I know to meet people is to take a dance class, a group class, and join the socials. In addition to that, it helps fulfill some of the fundamental needs that we have as human beings. When I was taking a marriage and family counseling class in undergrad, the author of the textbook, who was a clinical psychologist, he wrote in it, every human being has these 5 fundamental needs: the need for physical intimacy, the need for emotional intimacy, the need for intellectual intimacy, the need for social intimacy, and the need for recreational intimacy. The first 3 I got. Yeah, we all need physical, emotional, and intellectual, intimacy, as he put it. It was the last 2 that I was struggling with. What does it mean to have social intimacy? What does it mean to have recreational intimacy?
Mm-hmm.
And I spent probably now 15 years just thinking about that, writing about it, speaking about it, thinking about it, trying to implement it in what I do. And dancing provides that platform. And I'm very passionate about that because I know it's something that we need as human beings. We all need to connect at a social level, to the point where, if I show up at a place where, we and the boys are hanging out, and you know my story, you know my name, you know my background, and I know yours, right? Like there's a knowing there. There's a social intimacy that's going to happen there.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a barbershop. You know what I mean? Like you see the same heads every week, right?
Yeah.
Get to know each other, tell stories. The news gets spread around. you get a little bit more personal sometimes. When somebody's sitting at your chair, there's going to be personal information going back and forth. You're looking at the picture of their kids on the mirror. Like there's a lot of connection there. There's that intimacy that happens at a social level. And dancing does that, and I'm passionate about that.
There's definitely that social intimacy there with Jay, because I think he's like my unofficial counselor at this point. So he's helped me out of many jams. So, I wanted to touch base on this other topic here, and also because for the sake of time here, Steve. But one of the fascinating things that you're doing that I don't think I've seen any other dance studio do, for that matter, or any other dancing instructor, is that you're starting a subscription. So would you mind kind of talking to us about exactly what that is and what gave you the kind of the vision and idea to start that?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for bringing that up. So Instagram is running a beta where they're allowing people to certain people to do subscriptions. They're using it as a platform where, if I have a particular following and I do a particular kind of thing, people can now subscribe to what I do for exclusive content. So the subscription service on the NJ Salsa platform through Instagram allows me to provide exclusive content on 5 different themes. The one that I'm most excited about is how to build a dance community. And the reason that excites me is because I feel like anywhere where you have dancers or people with entrepreneurial spirits, like I had in major cities, they could build a dance community. And had I had a blueprint with some principles and strategies along the way, then I think I wouldn't have made some of the mistakes that I made along the way. I think I just would have gotten to where I want to get to a little bit quicker. And so,
what were the mistakes, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I was going to ask.
If you don't mind talking about it.
Yeah. So, for example, about 3 years into NJ Salsa, we went from 1 location to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. At some point, I was training other instructors, and I really wanted to expand and stretch, flex our muscle to see what we were capable of doing. So, I took on a really big, we had 13 locations running in 1 week at some point.
Wow.
So for example, on Thursday, I would have 4 different locations running at the same time. I was at one, and then I had 3 other instructors running at 3 other locations. And what I learned through that experience is that I just didn't have the base, didn't have the network to support that, to sustain that kind of expansion. And, it was a good exercise in trying to really stretch my muscles and figure out what the company is capable of doing. But I learned the hard way, we weren't ready. We weren't ready for that. And, if I had a little guidance along the way, if I had a mentor, then I probably would not have made that mistake the way I made it. I count that as a mistake, but it's something that I learned from. So, I won't make that mistake again.
That was all part of the journey, though. So it's not like something that should hang your head over,
Absolutely. That's a good point. That's definitely a good point. What would you say, Steve, I guess, is the ultimate vision that you have for NJ Salsa? Where do you see it 2, 3, 5 years from now?
NJ Salsa, as a company, I hope we continue to recruit and train quality instructors who are also building communities. So that's still our mission as a company. More broadly, I have a bigger vision to do this in other major cities throughout the United States. And what I'm hoping to do with that subscription service through Instagram is really provide a platform where people can get information, quality information about how to build a dance community. I have that background in community organizing. I have that degree study in congregational dynamics. I understand the value of community, and I have the experience of having built a network of community. So, to be able to put that information, that those strategies, those principles in a platform that people can access in Miami, in Charlotte, in Phoenix, in LA, that's valuable. So I'm hoping that we use that platform wisely and for that purpose.
That's super dope. Jay, did you even know that Instagram was offering like a subscription, like a beta subscription?
I had seen it pop up a couple times with a couple followers that I follow that were offering it. I never even looked into it. I didn't even think of looking into it. But I just threw like a whole new idea right here talking to Steve right now. Like, man, just put me onto something that I could possibly build something through it. And I was like, wow, I'm blown away by it.
And so when is this going to go live, Steve?
Yeah, so we've been having some struggles with the actual platform. And, I've been in conversation with Meta about trying to get that rectified. But at the moment, every time the way it works is in a very simple way, in a simple version. I'm supposed to be able to post a video, click on a button that says only for your subscribers, and then it shows up on the profile on the feed of those who are subscribed, and only those who are subscribed.
Wow.
So nobody else should be able to see it.
Is that kind of like the friends only? Like, when you put an IG story and you can just put it towards the friends only? Okay.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. Exactly. It's supposed to show up only for your subscribers or only for your friends. But unfortunately, the way it's working on my platform, not everybody's having this issue, but I am. I'm posting a video, I'm clicking on that button, but everybody gets to see it. So, Instagram is still learning themselves about how to make it effective and efficient. And we're learning along with them. And, we're going through the growing pains, but that's okay because I think we'll come out better on the other side.
Oh, no, for sure. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the final product. And, last two questions here, and this being the first one. For someone that's coming into the game that is, just up and coming, a dance instructor who wants to reach the level that you're at today, what advice would you give to that person?
I think one thing I would say is be clear about what you want to focus on. So some people want to be, international stars, international dance stars. They want to teach at all the festivals. They want to perform. That's one avenue to do it. Others want to be local, plant communities, have a base around them, be able to sustain a local business. You want to be clear about what direction you want to go into, because that's how you're going to train yourself. That's what you're going to spend your time on. If you're putting your hands in too many pots, you don't get to that cookie. You want that cookie. You got to know which pot to go in, and you got to focus on that one pot. So, like anything else, sharpen your focus, put 100%, go after it. If what they want to do is be a great instructor, learn teaching methodology, learn how to teach, learn how to teach others, being, just to keep building that bridge to being a barber, right? Like being a barber and being a teacher of barbers could be two different things.
Whole different ball game.
It's a whole different ball game. Right? So just sharpening that focus, being clear about what you want, going after it.
Awesome. And I think this was the final question, which isn't really a question, but you sort of been doing it, but sort of kind of, with all the guests that we bring on, just kind of thank them for their time. We usually give them the last couple minutes of the episode to plug or promote, whatever it is that they want to plug and promote. So, I know you've been doing it throughout the episode, but just, I guess, one final hurrah is there anything you would like to plug and promote for the listeners that are tuning in right now?
Yeah, I would say, follow us on Instagram if you have that platform. That's our main platform. And you'll get to see some growth. I think, just Instagram has been a powerful, powerful vehicle for NJ Salsa. We started with less than 200 followers.
Wow.
And now we're getting close to 16,000. We're going after that blue check mark. We have a subscription service that we're trying to build out. And we're going to use the platform for some other cool stuff. So, to follow the journey, I would say get on that platform and follow us that way. So that's come out to one of the classes, man. Have a good time. Come and enjoy.
That Wednesday class sounds really appealing. It's like 10 minutes from my house. Because me and my wife be bumping heads when we dance salsa because she's on this Colombian vibe. And I'm like, yo, I'm just trying to catch up. So you might see me in one of those classes, Steve.
Yeah, my wife has been driving me crazy too to go to one of the socials. So you'll probably see us there sooner rather than later, and we'll be coming back for some personal lessons as well, Steve. So you'll see us shortly. Steve, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. I know you're a busy man. Jay, do you have any closing comments before we wrap this up?
I just want to say thank you so much, Steve, for your time, for your knowledge, for dropping the bars. Like, you enlightened us and all today in every aspect of this interview, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think we got some much needed motivation at 11:55 on a Monday night that I don't think we had going into the day. So, we definitely appreciate you for that. To everyone listening, thank you for tuning in. Make sure to rise up. Until next time, peace.
Thank you, fellas.
Thank you.
Dope conversations, everyday people, learning life lessons, this is what we live for. Maybe perfect strangers, but we cut up like we kinfolk. We all have stories and all our stories should be told.